Hi everyone, and welcome to my bootCon 2022 presentation. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can develop a Python script to conduct DNS Recon as part of the active recon and footprinting process of pen testing. To do so, I'll be utilizing Visual Studio Code, Python 3, and then finally, once we have developed our tool, I will run it in a terminal within Kali Linux environment. All right, so let's get started. We have Visual Studio Code open, we're ready to go, we've saved our file. So the first thing that we want to do is start importing some of the modules and libraries that we will use to write our code. We're going to import PyFiglet, which of course is the most important. It's what gives us our amazing splash screen. Then we're going to import Socket, and I'll explain these modules more as we write the rest of the code. But for now, just know that importing Socket is what is going to make that client server connection when we start scanning for open ports. Going to import sys, import DNS resolver. That's going to help us with our DNS enumeration. And then from datetime, we're going to import datetime. And then once more, before we start writing the code, I just want to give the overview of what this tool will be doing. First, we want this tool to take the target domain that we input and to return back the IP address. Then we're going to take that IP address and essentially mimic an Nmap scan, where we're going to scan that target IP for open ports. Then from there, we're going to start enumerating and look for other DNS records so that we can start the process all over again. All right. So now that we've done that, let's create our splash screen, our favorite part. So we're going to set the variable splash, assign it to pyfiglet dot format, and this is where we get to put what we want to title our splash screen. So I'm going to be super creative and title it DNS Recon, and then we want to tell our tool to print the splash screen. So let's start there and run it so we can get a good idea what it looks like. Yay, there we are. We look very cool. Okay, let's move on now with the meat of the code. So the first thing that I mentioned we want to do is we want to get the target, let's do this, get the host IP address from our target domain name. All right, so we're going to create the variable t domain, and we're going to assign that to input. And what input function is going to do is it is going to ask for an input from the user. So I'll demo that in just a moment. But we want it to say enter target domain name to look up. All right, let's run that. I don't know if you can see that. My Zoom is blocking it, but it looks like it worked. All right, great. So now from there, let's get a little fancier and let's print a banner, and you'll see what that means about target domain that we look up. And to do that, we're going to do print. And what's happening here, I'm going to do this a couple different times in our code, so I'll just explain it this one time. We're going to put an underscore in there, and it's going to print an underscore 60 times to give us a banner. And then we want to print what our banner is going to say, which is, please hold, please wait. We are looking up target IP address, right? Because we're inputting in a domain, and we want to return the target IP address. And then we're going to put t domain. Oops. Okay. And then we're going to also print another set of underscores times 60 to close out that banner. All right. And just for the sake of seeing it, I'll demo it again. It might not work unless we're in the terminal. Okay, you'll see that at the end. All right, so before we actually start doing the domain IP address lookup, we want to check the date and time. And the reason why we're doing that is because we all know during a pen test or during an attack, time matters. And so I want to know exactly how much time did it take for this scan to run. So check date and time, the scan started. We're going to do that by setting variable t1, time 1, to date time dot now. All right, so what's going to happen is the tool is going to, before it gets started, it's going to check, give a timestamp, or it's going to internally check the time that it started. All right, then we're going to print IP address of host is, drumroll, and then we're going to do that socket function. So remember, we imported socket, which starts our client server connection. So we're going to do a function called get host by name. And what this is doing is it's going to take our inputted target domain that we asked for above, and it's going to get the host IP address from that domain. Okay, now that we've done that, the tool has done that, we're going to check the time again. So check time again. And we're going to do that by now saying time 2, assign that to the function date time now. All right, so that will show us. Actually, now what we have to do is we need to calculate how long it took from time 2, subtract time 1. Actually, let's say calculate how long the scan took. All right, so to do that, we're going to do variable is total time is time 2, subtract time 1. All right, and then let's print to say our scan was completed in blank. That's going to be our time, and then total. All right. Let's see. Oh, that's why it's not showing. Now I can see it. So let's use, this is a good time to pause and see how our tool is working. Let's try, ironically, for example, the domain nmap.org. Let's say that was our target. There we go. So now that what we've done is we've entered the target domain name. Our tool says, please wait, looking up target IP address. Oh, I got to go back and fix that. And it returns the IP address of the host. So let's fix this one part up here. There we go. It should be this. We don't want it to actually say tdomain. So let's run that one more time. All right, type in nmap.org. There we go. So it is telling us, please wait, we are looking up target IP address of nmap.org. All right. So now that we've done that, let's move on to creating our port scanner. So let's remind ourselves what we're doing here. We are creating port scanner. All right. So to do that, let's create a variable target server equals input. That's going to be enter a remote host to scan. This is where we can input our IP address that was generated to us after putting in a domain. Okay, to scan. There we go. And then let's make another variable target IP. Is again, we're calling that socket, using that socket function to get our host by name, get it by the T domain. All right, let's stop there and run the tool again. Okay, let's move this. All right, enter most remote host to scan. So we're going to now enter the IP 45.33.49.119. Okay, great. So of course it didn't complete what it's doing because we have more code to write, but that was just to show you where we get to put that in at. Okay, so now that we have done target IP, okay, perfect. So now what we want to do is we're going to check the time again by putting T3. So now this is time number 3 equals date time dot now. Perfect. Okay, and then we're gonna print another banner. Just put print banner, and again we're going to print an underline times 60. And the banner that we are going to ask it to print is to say, please wait, scanning remote, let's say scanning target host for open ports. Because again, these banners are really important when you're conducting a pen test. You're going to be most likely doing, hopefully, more things than just one at once. And so you're going to need a reminder of what you're doing. All right, print underscore 60 times. Okay. All right, so now that we made our banner, we're going to get to the part in the script where we are going to scan target IP for all open ports. To do this, we're going to create a for loop. Where we're going to say for port in range. Now, fun fact, there are 65,535 TCP ports. Nmap only scans for 1,000 of the most common, which makes a lot of sense and saves a lot of time. But for the purpose of today's demo, we are going to scan all of those. All right. And we will be creating in just a little bit a timeout to help save time when we do that. So let's create the variable S where we use that socket function. And remember, this is from when we imported socket. And so what this does, the socket.socket creates a socket object. And what we're going to do is we're going to add socket.af. The af inet is actually what takes in, it's the internet address for IPv4. And then we're also going to do socket.sock stream, and that's a socket type for TCP. Okay, perfect. So now that we've done that, we're going to set the timeout so that our socket doesn't run forever, which it will. Default timeout. So this is going to say after this amount of time, move on to the next port. Don't keep scanning it and scanning it and scanning it. All right. Perfect. So, and we might just want to make a note for ourselves here that says set timeout so it doesn't run forever. All right. So after we've done that, we want it to return a list of open ports. And so we tell our tool to do that by setting result, variable result to sconnect x, and we're going to put target, IP, and port. Okay, great. And then we're telling it if the result is equal to 0, if the port is open, essentially, we want it to print port, and then that plus sign is going to be the symbol that we use for open. Open format port. All right. And I thought at first that I wanted to make a tool that also checked for closed ports, but with the amount of ports that we're scanning and what we're trying to do, that really is not necessary. So we won't be doing that. And then we're going to do sclose to close the socket. And before we run that, what we'll need to do is we need to create, basically we need a plan for errors. So let's create an error in case Control C is pressed. So we're going to do except. So we're telling it to do all of this, try a for loop of all this except if you have a keyboard interrupt, which would be if you hit Control C. Then we want it to print host name could not, let's make it simple. And in here, you could type something funny. You could say you pressed Control C, exiting, but let's just be simple. Print exiting. All right. And now another, let's do create error in case it doesn't respond, even though we set the timeout. This will happen. Except socket.error. Then we want it to print couldn't connect to server. And then what do we want it to do if it can't connect? We're going to do sys exit. All right. So now that we've done all that, we want to check the time again to see how long this scan takes. So check time again. And let's just double check. Did we set the time the first time? We did. So we set the first time, time 3, and then we started all of this. And now that it's done, we're going to check time again by saying time 4, T4, equals date time now. And that is going to calculate how long, the scan took to run. Okay, we're going to do that by total. Now it's T4 and subtract T3. All right. And then we want it to print scanning completed in blank, and then the total. All right. Let's see how that looks. Fix a quick issue. Report in range. Oh, let's see. Oh, of course, we need that. Okay. All right. So again, we're going to try nmap.org, and we're going to scan 45.33.49. That's the IP it returned. And what did I label it to? Let's see, it's telling me line 49. Oh, I know why. All right, so now it's working. Please wait, scanning target host for open ports. Now, I'm going to actually leave this pending and continue to write the next part of the script on DNS enumeration, because as you'll see, I'll have to edit this part of the video and speed through it, because it does take about 2 minutes to scan through all 65,535 open ports. All right, so let's move on to do some DNS enumeration. DNS enumeration. All right, again, let's just go through. I might speed. Oh, you can see it's already starting to show the open ports. So again, we're going to create another banner. Create banner to tell us, remind us, what are we doing next, right? In case we're lost in thought. So we're going to print. And this time, let's do something fun, right? Because enumeration, ooh, we're getting further into it. So let's do hashtag, and then we're going to do that 60 times. And then we're going to print and say, now let's enumerate. We're getting somewhere. Print another, there we go, 60 times. All right. Okay, so now let's make a variable called record types and set it to an array of all the different types of records. Okay, and I'll go over what these different records are. I'm going to set a few, but I'll wait till I run the tool and I'll actually go over and show you which one it pulls. Set it to a record. Let's also add S record. Let's do CNAME. Let's also do MX mail server records. All right, that's good. So now let's start another for loop. We're going to tell it to try. And then let's make the variable domain, and let's set it equal to T domain. And then again, preparing for any errors, except if there's an index error, then we're going to tell it to print syntax error. All right. And then the for loop for records. So for the records in the array record types, we're telling our tool to try. And we're going to use the function DNS resolver dot we're going to have it resolve, and we're going to call in the domain and records. And then we're going to have it print. All right, we're going to have it print records. Right. And then we're going to tell it, this is just for aesthetics, to print a long line, so an underscore. Let's just do times 30 for this one. And then for another for loop, for server and answer, we want it to print server to text, server to text. All right. This, okay. Except right, if there's no answer, pass, and then accept solver x domain. All right, we want it to print domain does not exist. All right, so this will help us a couple of these error codes. Let's just fix this. Right. Then we want it. So if the domain does not exist, we're telling it to quit. And then except if we have a keyboard interrupt, we want it to print. And let's just say quitting, or we could say exiting, goodbye. And we want it to quit. All right. So let's try this out. And it may not work. You'll notice we're kind of paused down here. I'm not sure why. If anyone knows, please let me know. But I noticed that it keeps kind of getting stuck right here. Only when using Visual Studio Code, we get stuck right here. But when I run it in the terminal within the Kali Linux environment, it doesn't do that. It goes all the way through. So I'll show that in just a moment. But let's just try. Let's try what a control does. Okay, so it does get us through that. Right. Okay, let's see if we do a control C through here. And something else that I did want to note is originally I had set under try, I set domain to, if you recall, we imported the sys module and I had set it to argument 1, which means in our terminal, when we go to run it, we would do Python 3. Oh, there we go, it ran. So I'll explain that in just a moment. If we had set the variable domain to sysarg and put the first argument in there, it means that when we're in our Kali Linux environment in our terminal, we would have hit Python 3, the name of our file, and then we would have entered in the domain right then and there. Instead of doing that, I just set domain equal to tdomain because we already have that up here and it eliminates redundancy. All right, so I will go over and show this in Kali Linux, but as you can see, our entire scan ran. We get our splash screen. Right here, we entered our target domain. It popped back in a short amount of time, our IP address of the target host, and then it scanned our ports. We did skip through that, and the terminal will show it, and then we enumerated and we got all of these records. All right, let's head over to the Kali Linux environment to run this. All right, so now we are in our Kali Linux environment, and I pulled up a terminal, and I had saved this project in here. I'll show you under nano to be the file. I saved it final project. So as you can see, same code in here, nothing different. If you were to compare. All right, so let's run that. We're gonna do Python 3, final project. There we go, DNS Recon. Splash screen, we're gonna do nmap.org. It's gonna return the IP address. It's working great. There we go. So this scan is most likely going to take a little bit longer than it did in Visual Studio Code. In this scenario, I'll just end up fast forwarding through this demo a little bit. All right, there we go. So our tool is complete. The scan for open ports took 2 minutes and 55 seconds. Then we started to enumerate and we returned the following records. So we see that port 22 SSH is open, port 25 and port 80 are open. In terms of enumerating and getting back DNS records. So this A record is for IPv4. And then AAA records is IPv6. The NS is the name server record, and then MX are the mail server records. So if we wanted to, we could actually start the scan all over again, and we could grab one of these records right here. So for example, let's pull this name, the NS2. So we could run it again and do Python 3 final project. And instead of nmap.org, we'll do ns2.linode.com or do ns2.linode.com. And it returns us back a different IP address. And from there, we can continue on with the rest of our scans to figure out what may be open on that end. All right, so that is the full demonstration of DNS Recon. Please let me know if you end up trying it on your own, how it works out, or if there's anything you recommend to do better. And with that, thank you so much for watching my bootcon presentation. Have a great day.